OK, Freddie, so what have you got for us?
So this is a question from Ryan, who asks, will Labour be forced into a strict immigration policy come the general election in order to stop it being the dominant issue?
OK, well, this is a good question. I actually have asked them about this because they're not very clear on it.
No, never.
I think it was Darren Jones, who is Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. He said at the end of the last year, the normal level of net migration is a couple of 100,000 a year, but it depends on the needs of the economy. And I think Labour were very quick after that to come out and say, we're not going to set any arbitrary targets for net migration. They don't want to put a number on it. And since then, I've noticed that that when shadow cabinet members are asked about this, they don't say that the 700,000 or whatever it reached is too high or too low. They try and keep away from the numbers.
Yeah, but I think they do say that immigration is too high at the moment.
Yes, but they don't say what they would want to bring it down to. I think they're a bit more equivocal about it. And the truth is they don't really have a plan for bringing it down, do they? They're kind of hoping that it will naturally come down without the Ukraine and Hong Kong refugee schemes, and once that build-up post-pandemic of foreign students has worked its way through the system, and of course the impact of the visa changes that the Conservative government have brought in, they're hoping that will bring the figures down naturally and they can take the credit for it.
Yeah, I think that's right, but I think we should also note that would only get them to around 200, 300,000. We don't know precisely, but it's not going to get them down to, let's say, 100,000. You've got to remember that when the Conservatives came in 2010, they promised to get it down to the tens of thousands. That's completely been blown out of the water now. We've got immigration around 700,000. It changes, obviously, and as you say, we've got these foreign students who have come post-pandemic. We've also got the Ukrainians and the Hong Kongers who have come, which slightly skew the figures, but I think the overall picture that immigration is extremely high is definitely right. I mean, Labour, I think there's some in the party who don't want to have this conversation, and they essentially have an extremely liberal perspective on immigration. The more the merrier. They think it's a positive. They think diversity is a positive. They think it's good for the economy. And then you've got some other, I think, you could put them on the sort of blue Labour side. You have some cultural concerns about immigration, and then you've also got the people who think that it suppresses wages as well. So I think there is a genuine split within the party, and that's part of the reason that we don't see a consistent, coherent policy on this. And also, I think they just think that the Conservatives have been so awful with immigration. They've annoyed the right, who are saying, well, why on earth are the boats still coming, and why is legal immigration so high? And they've annoyed the left, who are saying, why are you being so discompassionate in your language, and why are you treating immigrants in this way? Overall, they've completely lost any semblance of competence on the issue. So Labour are very happy for the government just to receive all of this abuse and hatred and to sort of sit back. Yeah,
and something else to remember, I think, which I've heard, is that Rachel Reeves and figures like Jonathan Reynolds, the Shadow Business Secretary, they are having a lot of meetings with figures in business. That's been a sort of consistent story for well over a year, that they're having these meetings. All of these representatives from the business world want to meet with them, and something that they always bring up is that they want to protect this workforce that they get from abroad. So they are sort of having that lobbying impact on their decision making as well. So I think that's another thing that's coming into the fact that they're trying to be a little bit careful about what they say about numbers.
Yeah, I think that's right. But we've got to remember that Keir Starmer, I know I always mention this, but I think it's important. Keir Starmer said at the CBI last year that this country has an immigration dependency and needs to wean itself off that. And I think there is some, not consensus, but there are some who think in the party that business needs to stop being so dependent on this cheap labour. But there's also concerns and tensions within Labour's economic policy and how it relates to immigration. For instance, take social care. We know that the social care sector is completely dependent on migrant labour at the moment because there are so few British people who want to do the jobs. And then at the same time, we've got Labour's policy to introduce collective bargaining within the social care sector. That essentially means that wages are going to rise. So economically, how on earth are they going to give the money to the local councils to pay those extra wages? And also, is that an anti-immigration policy? Is that how we should see it? Is that a way in which they can reduce the numbers by paying social care workers more? I think it probably is. But then the thing that we have to talk about is how you pay for that in the short term. Yeah. So if you cut immigration, it's the same with universities. Yeah. If you cut foreign students, universities will have less money to fund and subsidise native English students. So the government therefore has to fill the gap with some money. So in the short term, cutting immigration is going to be quite expensive.
Yeah. And Ben, I mean, is this split within Labour, which Freddie laid out, can you see that in the country? Because you do have sort of overwhelming dissatisfaction with the government on immigration, but for different reasons, don't you?
Overwhelmingly, the government is at rock bottom on its perception of handling immigration, just as it's rock bottom on its perception of handling the economy and law and order and inflation and the cost of living and literally every other issue that is trashing their ability to, project a brand of competence. I would make the point, though, that while the who leads on immigration right now, it's Labour, is overwhelmingly down to Tory fall and Labour rise. Labour is, just it's all relative. It's relative competence. Labour, if you ask people, do you trust Labour to handle immigration? Most people wouldn't. Most people are pretty still quite cynical about that. The long and short of the immigration debate that we all need to remember, even in 2024, is that the debate, whilst, of course, we no longer have UKIP, whilst we don't have Nigel Farage in the same shape, he's more so in a TV studio than at a public meeting. We still have a country that is, by and large, more sceptical towards immigration than in favour. We've shifted a little bit. Okay, overwhelmingly, most of us wants to see a reduction in the number. When you ask them what number they want, they don't have a clue. Most people can't really conceive these large numbers. 600,000 sounds pretty big. Tens of thousands sounds a bit more conceivable, a bit more agreeable. And I think Labour, that they shouldn't come anywhere close to that debate, because the Tory attempt to cut down to the tens of thousands fell, it failed, and UKIP and such like exploited it to great effect, which I think actually had a part to play in the Leave vote in 2016. Don't play with numbers here, partly because voters can't understand them, appreciate them, and they're just too big. So I think the question being, should Labour, will they be boxed in to going hard on immigration because public opinion sort of demands it so? I guess. I think, though, just refer back to what they've done in the past. 2015, Labour's own manifesto on, banning advertisements to overseas, about ensuring that companies can't advertise to overseas. I think if they do that, that might be some kind of tough measure, I suppose. But I think the time to have the debate on immigration is coming, and it can be had when the economy is good. And I think you can make a positive argument then, because the nuance in the immigration debate is this. When you ask people, what kind of immigrant do you want? Do you want doctors? Do you want high-tech people? Do you want very experienced people? Do you want students? Overwhelmingly, Britons are in favour. When you talk about cheap labour, when you talk about insert negative, descriptive, Britons are overwhelmingly against. But you can make the argument. But you've just got to be specific. You've got to make it on an argument of, do we want more doctors? Yes, we should train our own. But do you want more? And most Britons would say yes. You can definitely win the argument on that. But I think it's no one's making it yet, are they?
It's interesting. I was speaking to someone the other day, and they made this point that, of course, at the moment, the cost of living in the economy is top of voters' priorities. But immigration is a bit like the weather. It's not as if you would say, this is what I'm focused on every single day. And yet you do talk about it every day. It's something that's constantly there. It's something that I think many people are aware of. And I think if we look at the numbers over the past 2 years, they've been so vast. They're almost equal to the level of EU migration we had post 2004, and I think that was a big contributor to the Brexit vote. I don't think we should underestimate how harsh or strong the backlash will be in a few years' time. We've got to remember it takes a while for these things to work their way through the system, and we don't yet know what the political implications of that are going to be.
I have this theory that I don't know if it yet stands up to scrutiny, but I want people to start thinking about it, which is that people start to think about immigration when the good times are good. When the economy's grown, when they can start, it's less, the feeling about immigration is less about their own personal economic insecurity. It's actually about the kind of country they want to have. For example, the economy was growing in 2013 to 16. Most people were starting to feel the benefits. Consumer incomes were going up. Disposable incomes were going up, and then we had the Leave vote. And immigration anxiety was rising as well. Okay, this was when the economy was good. This was when people were feeling pretty well. And per what Freddie says, I think when the economy recovers, or rather when people start to feel the economy recover, immigration will jump up as well, because people will start to have opinions, again, further afield. It's less about survival. It's presently about survival. It's about the economy, the cost of living, inflation, wages. But once it stops being about that, immigration will fill that vacuum, and the Labour government almost certainly needs to be prepared for that debate.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching. We'd love to know what you think. Please make sure you leave your comments below. And if you enjoyed watching this podcast, you can watch more of our videos on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to like and subscribe.